I understand what you're saying.
Well, it
but
doesn't-
I don't like the notion because you could also it's also a protective measure. That used to be an elementary school building, and you had to house the children to keep them from running out into the
Well,
street.
sure. You
So
can
you
have a
don't, do
fence.
you look at the private schools in Manhattan that play on the roof around fencing as a jail? I'm just asking that question because I don't see it as a jail.
Well,
I see it as an elementary, and I kind of take it personally
Sure.
because I see it as an elementary school setting that it looks like that in predominantly every elementary school in the city in this country. So why would we consider that a jail when we wouldn't consider the private school in Manhattan that plays on a roof that's centered around the same type of chain link fencing as a jail? So I think we
Sorry,
really need to choose our wording very carefully because it's not a jail, it's a school building that educates children, and it has a reason for having a fence. We may not like the fence per se, we may not agree with having that style of fence, but it's not a jail, and our children are not in jail, they're in educational institutions.
Okay, so why don't we just, we keep Mandela on the table right now?
We can. Do you know, Mr. Zamore, if that's city-owned property or privately
No,
owned?
it's privately owned. And going back to your comments, I think you're number one over dramatizing. Whatever we say. I mean, every word we can't choose our words so carefully and play the optics of like, our kids are not in a jail. I know that. We all know that. The concept here is that if we can do better for our children here, then we must. So yes, they do need a fence. They do need the protection. It's in an urban environment, but we could put, number one, a much better fence that suits the needs, number one, but also that when they walk to the school, they could feel proud of going to the school. That's the concept. So for those of you who are applauding the fact that Mandela is suitable, that means that we here in Mount Vernon do not set a high enough standards for ourselves. We have to set a high standard for ourselves. We could do better, and therefore we shall do better. So for anyone to feel that that's acceptable and it's okay, it's not okay, because we could do better in every facility. We need to do better for the kids.
You're emphasizing the fact.
Okay, can we
Just a second.
can we just-
We're emphasizing the fact, not because of design. We're emphasizing the
we're
fact
getting off.
because we're trying
Yeah, a
to
little bit, yeah, we are.
ensue a specific direction, and we're using that those wordings and those jargons to ensue the direction we want it to go in. That's why it's being said. I understand that the design is not plausible for our children.
It has nothing to do with design right now. Right now, it's number one, it's aged, it's falling apart, it's not suitable any longer. So therefore, we need to make the environment more suitable so that the kids go into an environment that's nurturing. That's all it is.
Omar and Leslie, let's get, we need to move on. We'll talk about Mandela tonight.
I know Lincoln and Holmes are overpopulated at this time. When would the redistricting start? Because
It would really be contingent upon how we phase this in, and we'll refer to our architects to help us look at that. But if we take Parker and Traphagen hypothetically offline temporarily or at the same time, or maybe we don't take them off at the same time, that would have an impact on when and how we would redistrict. But the goal would be to create, once we get the concept, to create an implementation schedule and a plan so that everybody would know when and how they would be affected, and that we would have, it would certainly be a multi-year plan. This is not something that could happen. I'm all for it, kind of dealing with your pain all at once. This is huge. And we really need to take our time and implement this strategically and systematically to minimize the inconvenience on parents and kids.
Okay. All right,
All right,
Jim,
so
what's
sorry, what's the
next?
question on Mandela and what's the answer?
I think we decided we're going to hold off on
We're gonna
Mandela
table Mandela right now.
Right.
because it
Okay.
really doesn't have a huge impact on
Okay,
what we're
let's
doing,
just
quite
table
frankly. I
that
think
right
we
now.
have enough information based on our discourse here this evening to give the architects some direction and to come back on October 18th and do a full-fledged presentation that would really get to
28th?
28.
28th.
28. Did I say 23rd?
You said 18th.
Oh my God. On the 28th.
More meetings?
And really flesh out what this will look like and the implications for a bond, and then how we want to scale back. If this price tag is too meaty, how do we modify the plan at that point?
Last thing, Dr. Hamilton, could you talk to, and I know it's pretty vague, to timelines, if something like this we were to consider as a board that we were ready to move forward, whether it was exactly like this or some framework of this style, what type of timeline will we be looking at as far as full implementation?
The first thing we would be looking at doing is the work at Pennington, because we need to get those trailers out, because they do cost money. And they're energy hogs generally. So we would look to move, break ground on Pennington. If we could meet that timetable and get a bond approved early next year, we would look to break ground or begin the process for Pennington as early as summer 2016. By the time we fully implemented this plan, I suspect we're talking a 3 to 5 year implementation schedule.
Okay. All right, so that's it?
That's it.
Okay. I don't have anything to report today, so I would like to go on to the consent agenda. So if anybody has anything to pull from the consent agenda?
There were a couple of items pulled earlier. I'm going to ask Mr. McCormick to give the board an update. This was based on my conversations with board members during my conversations today.
3 field trips involving some high school athletic teams were removed from the agenda tonight, and they'll come back on the 28th pending additional information to be provided to the Office of the Superintendent. And a contract with JCY was also pulled for clarification on some items in it, which we anticipate will be returned to the board at a following meeting.
Okay.
What's the number on that, Ted?
There were three.
The JCY,
JCY was 7.1, I think,
6.1.
and the other ones were,
To Reading, the trip to
it was a trip to
Canada,
Vancouver, trip to Pennsylvania,
and then-
and they were the first 3. They should already have been removed from your agenda before you got here
Okay.
this evening.
It's not on it now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that's that.
I had some questions on a few.
Okay.
Do we want to ask them, I'm okay asking them now if we could, or do we need to pull them, move them?
Do you want to pull them and vote on them separately, or do you want to discuss them?
Separately.
You
I
wanna-
would like to discuss them. I'm fine having a
I
quick
have some
discussion
that I
and
wanna
voting,
discuss
so,
also.
as part of the consent
Do you want to
agenda.
pull them, or you want to?
Well, let's make the motion on the consent and then open
Wait,
for.
what are we speaking about?
She's trying to have you guys questions. So
I
she'll-
just have a couple questions that I didn't get a chance to ask earlier.
Oh, on other, or not those, not the ones that already pulled,
Not
okay.
those.
Okay. So do we have a motion on the consent, right?
No, not yet.
Okay. So let's have a motion on consent, a second, and then open for discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, second,
Trustee Miller, second.
second.
Trustee Saunders. Discussion.
Okay.
Okay, you guys,
first?
yes, you can.
On 7.1.
My computer died, so I'm gonna need some help, Rick.
It's the authorization to continue the Sport and Arts in the School Foundation. With the amount of money that we're
Yeah,
going
I
to
know
be
it.
paying monthly, I want to know how many children are engaged in that sports and art.
Okay. That question actually came up a couple of times today and I'm going to ask Dr. BC to talk about that. But that program is fully funded by grant. It's in partnership with the Youth Bureau, and we know we service at least 100 kids with that, probably more. And it was previously at 4 schools, is now at 2 schools, but it is completely grant funded.
And also the one about 7.2, the Title I Monthly Parent University at the Benjamin Turner. Would that be for all parents in the district, or is that just for the Benjamin Turner parents?
Dr. BC?
That's all the parents in the district who want to attend those classes.
Thank you. Oh,
Okay.
I have another one. It says that we're hiring an uncertified substitute?
Yes, the reason that designation is there, did you get my email, Mr. Miko? The reason that designation is there is because there is a different rate of pay and a specific period of time that we can use that substitute, so we have to make that distinction.
Right, and 10.4 and 10.6, authorization to appoint cost report editors was 10.4, and 10.6 was authorization to appoint a random moment time study coordinator. Are those paid positions?
No.
Okay, good. Sorry.
All the same questions.
Sorry. It's also the same person, so I just wanted to
Right,
make sure
yeah.
that they could do all the jobs they were getting. And then 10.7, Authorization to appoint an assistant random moment time study coordinator. Okay, sorry, that's
Same
the
thing.
same thing.
Yep.
Non-paying. Ms. Gayon is very busy.
I have a question. Are we giving them all different hats to wear?
How about 10.10? Can you explain the concept of the lead agency?
Oh, yeah.
Whose
What
report
was
is
this
this?
que- what was this
Mr.
question?
Silver? Sure. Mr. Silver?
Yes.
Should
Can-
we decide
Microphone.
at Pennington?
Microphone? Yeah, thanks.
Should we decide at Pennington? No, right here. Should we decide at Pennington to build a building that exceeds 10,000 square feet in the total of the building, not the footprint, but the total of the building? It requires a separate type of environmental review than would a smaller building require. If we build 6 classrooms, we have what will be a Type 2 resolution, and there'll be no environmental review further necessary. If we go to 8 classrooms, that then exceeds 10,000 feet. By calling us the lead agency, it then allows public comment for the next 30 days on the subject of whether we should be a lead agency. This is a pretty much procedural action, doesn't cost any money to do this, and if we should decide to have the building be 6 classrooms and not 8, we abandon that and we move on. That's a very simplified version of it, but what it does is to protect our time schedule that we've established. If we don't go for this 30-day comment period now, and we build 8 classrooms in the end, we will have difficulty maintaining our time schedule to have a bond vote early in the year. Therefore, we can't get our stuff to the state early in the year. Therefore, we will not be able to break ground in the summer. This is a precautionary measure.
Thank you.
That's it?
I have a question about the resolution that was pulled. That was the
JCY?
CY.
It was pulled because there was a question regarding the contract. The contract in one paragraph references a $20,000 payment. In the second paragraph, it references monthly payments. It does not specify in the contract how those payments are dispersed. There's a $20,000 divided over a 20-month period. So it's just a question about clarity, which the lawyers are in the process of reviewing and will amend it to be specific about the pay
Will that
scale.
impact the children? Was that for a after-school program?
This is for the volunteers that come into our schools. It will not impact the program because it will come back on for the 28th.
Okay, all right then.
I just had a question for Felicia in regards to they were pretty much all her tabs. It wasn't to one specific. I wanted to know what controls we had in place to ensure that the work was being done for all of the hospital settings where we send teachers, et cetera, for the different services to be provided outside the district. What controls are in place to ensure that work is being done so that we know exactly what we're paying?
Okay, Mrs. Gayon, did you hear the question? The question is, what provisions do we have in place to monitor the implementation of services at these hospitals and programs that are outside of district that service our children?
They're pretty costly.
All of them.
There's a long list.
Okay, so we have in place this year student data sheets. So the out-of-district coordinator, together with the supervisor, are filling out sheets to ensure that the students are provided with their services. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I'll try. We have developed a form. It's a student data sheet to make sure that all students are provided with their services.
I think his question is about the quality of the services.
My question is, what controls do we have to know that the services are offered? So when they send, I'm not sure if we invoiced, because it just tells us the amount that we pay per hour. So one person gets 75 an hour, another person gets 100, like whatever the amount, the rate is. How do we ensure that the services are completed for the invoice that they send us?
We check the invoice against, somebody has to sign off that the service was rendered. So there's a checks and balances. We don't just pay bills without checking that the service has been provided.
Okay, so I go to provide, I'm just trying to make sure I have clarity. So I go to Lincoln Watts, I provide a service, someone at Lincoln Watts signs my sheet, and then they send it to you?
But nobody's going to Leakin Watch.
That was an example.
Oh, okay, so, sorry, a little literal tonight. So let's say, for example, we provide home instruction in a child's house. The parent has to sign off, and together with that, the teacher provides work samples of the student work so that we ensure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We also have one of the secretaries in the Student Services Department follows up to ensure that the services, let's say for home instruction, are being provided.
So there's follow-ups, et cetera, et
Yes,
cetera? Okay, thank you.
yes. And we're getting better at doing more and more follow-ups.
Thank you. My last question, Dr. Hamilton, is 919. It was kind of unclear as to how it was written. Is this prorated? Because it just has the salary. It just has the salary, and then it says 4 days. Typically, when we receive those, it lists the 4 days in the prorated rate. It doesn't list the salary, and then just says 4 days. So
Help me understand your question. Are these sporadic?
We want to make sure we're not paying this guy $70,000. We're
Absolutely.
paying
No, it is
$70,000
prorated.
divided by.
typically, when
Right.
we receive these, it just
I
says
see
the
what
4
you're saying.
days. Times it tells us what the taxes is. It tells
Rate
us
per
what
day.
the benefits are.
Gotcha.
It doesn't. This is not typically how.
I got you. You know, this is prorated. That's the annual salary, and it's prorated on the 4-day basis.
Thank you.
Okay. That got all the questions?
That's
Okay.
it? You already approved the consent agenda, am I right?
No, we have
But
to
you didn't
vote on
approve it, you have
Vote
to
on it.
approve it.
Well, it's just a discussion.
All those in favor?
All in?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. There's. We just need to vote on this one. They need to wait.
Right, this is the second reading of this, right?
Yeah.
That's-
I'm sorry?
Having a good time.
This is the purchasing policy. It's the
Second reading of the purchasing policy.
The second reading of the policy? The purchasing policy, 14-1? Mm-hmm. Okay. We need to vote on that separately?
It's a on tonight's agenda is an amendment to the district's purchasing policy. Per the district's policy adoption guidelines, tonight would be the second reading, and the board is, administration is requesting that the board read it tonight and also adopt it this evening.
Ready to drink some.
Mr. Silver, do you want to just refresh them?
One of the state guidelines is that purchasing of small items can be done at the discretion of the purchasing department, which is under my authority, up to $1,000. Our policy within the district has only been that it be to $500. So this will make it a little bit easier for us to purchase, and will then comply with the state guidelines.
I move.
All right.
I second.
Trustee Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
As far as committee reports, do you want to talk about anything?
Sure, I mean, I could start in terms of buildings and grounds. We've been going throughout the district, and we've been getting much better at, and I have to give a lot of credit to the administration. The Assistant Director of Building and Grounds, Mike Felicio, has been working arduously to make sure that the basic tasks at hand, such as mowing the lawns at all the school properties, picking up the litter at all the school properties, all those are achieved. And I believe people in the community could see that is happening. We have some beautification, curb appeal projects, initiatives that are underway, and again, we had hoped that the few that we started would have been completed already. However, again, I mentioned that we simply are lacking currently the capacity to work any quicker at that. Regarding the restructuring subcommittee, we obviously have been working along with the administration to come up with some of the plans and visions that we just showed tonight, and we will continue to flush all those out and continue to meet with the board and members of the community to make sure that we have a plan that's tailored to the needs of all in the district.
Okay, thank you.
Then can we talk to that a little bit, Leslie?
Sure.
What are we doing as a district, being that we are so short-manned in these particular areas? are we looking or are we planning to fill any of these vacancies as it relates to the, I know we hire a lot of cleaners, et cetera, but I'm talking about electricians, plumbers, cleaners.
Sure, I believe Mr. Silva could speak more to that. I believe this year we are planning to add 4 to the payroll, and I believe we're looking to add maybe 6 more next year. I'm not sure in exactly which departments. I believe you could speak more to that in terms of where those employees would be located.
We have needs, I can speak. We have needs everywhere, but we have spoken about adding 4 people to the grounds crew for this year. When that will happen, we're not exactly sure. We are still evaluating the current state of the budget and seeing where we are versus the money we have before we put that forward to the superintendent as a recommendation. But that is our hope and is our plan. And we are intending to add in next year's budget to increase the size of the ground staff as well as some of the specific labor types that Mr. Seymour has mentioned, such as additional painter, plumber, electrician, that type of specific trade, which, when on staff and if capable, could save us a lot of money.
All right, Omar, do you have anything from your committee? Okay,
I'll give a report on the policy committee. We met yesterday morning with the superintendent. We discussed the current district policies just in a general fashion on harassment and bullying, and also on, there's a specific policy on HIV/AIDS, and we had Dr. Balshan, the school physician, was there in attendance, and it was great to have her. And we talked kind of more generally about some of the health policies in place in the district and some possible improvements we might consider for those, expanding the HIV/AIDS policy to bloodborne pathogens generally to be more consistent with federal guidelines, possibly clarifying some of the roles between teachers versus school nurses, especially now that we are so lucky to have school nurses back in every school again. And we talked about updating policies regarding monitoring and disposal of student medications. The final subject we talked about was the policies of this board meetings and committee meetings. And those policies are pretty thin, which is not a bad thing, but they just are. And I think it might be let me just tell you some of the things we talked about. So there's some obvious changes. For example, there's a policy currently that says we're going to have a visitation committee that visits all the school districts every year. We don't have such a committee. Instead, we have we've come up with a system of adopting schools and everything, which performs the same function. So that's not. I mean, that's a minor change that needs to happen to the wording. That's not a big deal. But I think we need to, all of us, not just the policy committee, but all of us should consider how the agenda is made. And specifically, should subcommittees have some role in the process before an agenda item is put forth? And I know that happens a lot of times just in the nature of discussions between the administration, and we ask each other questions, and we have good communication with the administration. We do, and hopefully that will always continue. Should we make that more formal or less formal? I think that should be something that we talk about at a working session in a future date. That's just a suggestion. And also, I think we can make some very minor changes to how we do voting that would bring some clarity, both for us as a board and for the public. Things like maybe instead of having just a single long consent agenda, that we vote by topic in the way it's already broken up.
We just adopted this.
We're just all laughing at you because that was what we had before.
That was what we
How
had.
are we paying for it?
All right. I said I wanted a discussion, and we had a discussion. That's fine. But I just want to make sure, like this was we had discussion before we voted, and that was all fine. I just want to make sure that we don't get in the habit ever, and we're not, of having one item on the agenda that ends up kind of like holding ransom to the other 90 items on the agenda. That's my only concern.
That's why we do it this way.
And so
Every item could, keep us.
I think it would be helpful for us to review the current policy on pulling agenda items, and just so we're all on the same page. I'm a new board member, right? I want to make sure we're on the same page about what happens when an agenda item is pulled,
Right.
and how does it get back up for a vote. Just the process.
Okay.
So we should talk about
Well,
that
we
in
can
future
talk,
session.
I mean, Cliff is here. Could you explain the process I know each board member, you explained it, the process of pulling versus tabling, and.
Let me start with a specific question, right? Before we go to a consent agenda vote, right? Is it true that any board member unilaterally can remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes.
That's what I thought, right?
Right.
And then that agenda item automatically goes to the end of the agenda to be voted on separately.
Correct. And that is removing from consent to vote on later, but there's a difference between pulling it. So that's being pulled from consent, but tabling is being pulled from the agenda for vote tonight and onto another meeting or a future meeting.
Right, and a single board member cannot unilaterally table a motion, an agenda item. They can only pull it from the consent agenda. As a reminder to all of us and to the public, I guess, that the consent agenda is a mere formality and a convenience thing. It just saves us from having to vote on every single item one at a time. But anything that's on the agenda will get voted on, either under the consent agenda or not on the consent agenda, unless you get a majority of the board to agree to table it and take it off.
Right.
If you do not have 5 board members to agree, then it will be voted on.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the committees. Any other committee reports?
I have one.
Oh, sorry, I asked you if you had
you
anything.
didn't?
I did.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
No, I asked you earlier if you had anything. You
Sorry.
said no.
Oh, I don't have a report, I just have, actually, I have an announcement.
sorry.
Which is the Parent and Community Relations Committee, which is PR, donor outreach, everything. One we're supposed to have last Tuesday, which got preempted by another more important meeting, is trying to be scheduled for the 20th at 8 a.m. And at that time, the plan, as I said at our last meeting, is to parse out the different aspects so that we can have some individual subcommittees of the subcommittee or the committee. And we are hopeful that we can do that on the 20th at 8 a.m. And as far as the next technology committee meeting, that's dependent on when the CNI meeting is, because technology falls under CNI. So that's when we'll be discussing technology next, is November 5th at 8 a.m. Thanks.
I forgot to say, the next policy committee meeting will be at 8 a.m. on November 10th. It's a Tuesday morning, and we will be discussing, I've asked Dr. Beltran to come back and talk about the immunization policies for the district, both of students and of administrative staff. And also, something that we talked about earlier was the district purchasing and hiring of contractors policies. Especially if we're going to move forward quickly with hiring a bunch of people in connection with a bond. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on the policies of how the district approves people, how RFPs are sent out, when and if we demand we're paid up front for things like that.
Did you ever do that policy for the upfront payment for the use of the facilities?
No, that's the purpose of this next meeting.
Okay, all right.
The audit committee will meet on Friday morning at 8:30. We'll be meeting with our external auditors to go over the audit that was recently completed by our auditors. So we'll meet Friday morning, 8:30 to 9:30, and also Rick will help me pull together. Yes, Rick.
Yes.
Actually, just a job spec for a new audit committee member from the public.
Okay.
There are just some guidelines that we have in bringing on audit committee members from the public, and so we'll put something out so that folks know the type of qualifications that are necessary.
Good.
We've had that last year, I believe.
We did. I think we
We had those-
need to flush it out a little bit more.
Okay.
I'd like to have, we should really have a rotating seat on the audit committee every
public?
year, for the public every year, just to bring fresh set of eyes, new ideas in, and someone that understands how to read these documents and have some experience. So we'll put some guidelines out for the public to have, and each person will be required to submit a resume, et cetera.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about the food drive. food drive. It went very successfully, and there were so many people, and we do apologize to the public for some misconceptions and misinformation that went around. So we do apologize. Next time, we will do it better. The next food drive is going to be at Parker School, the first Saturday of November. Hours are
9:30 to 10:30.
9:30 to 10:30.
Can we get some feedback on the turnout for this? How many packages we give out?